This is one of those episodes where I think I'm gonna have to keep the nightlight on for a while. I do not like all of those hands. Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is The Raptor, and next time on Death Battle, we are moving back to anime with Mahito from Jujutsu Kaisen versus Shigaraki from My Hero Academia. Naturally, this is one of the matchups that was revealed on the Kickstarter campaign, so a lot of us already knew this one was coming, and these are the matchups that are going to be coming out throughout this year and probably early next year as well. And while this was far from my most anticipated matchup that was in that lineup, I'm still very interested in it, mostly for its themes and, its presentation potential. I think a lot of that could be very, very cool, and I'm interested in seeing how Death Battle handles everything. And as long as we get an episode that's like around the same level as like Gojo versus Makima, I think I'm going to be pretty satisfied with it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let's start with the stats for this prediction, because while those don't give us the full picture, there are still some notable differences. Mahito scaling directly to Gojo or Sukuna at their best is obviously not really in the cards for him, but there are some other characters closer to his tier that we can use to get a general ballpark idea. For instance, Death Battle calculated Jogo's maximum meteor feat to be well over 800 kilotons of TNT, and while pretty much all of Mahito's personal AP feats are less impressive than this, you can still argue a general scaling chain for this kind of range, just to avoid estimating too low. As for speed, Mahito can perform the Cursed Energy technique known as Black Flash, as well as compare to characters that can react to such an attack, which involves acting within a microsecond and translating to massively hypersonic speeds. I know there was some arbitrary JJK speed cap from way back when, but there are more than enough feats now to disprove it. Death Battle even ignored it before. If you really want a high end though, we could refer to Sukuna dodging EM waves from Kashimo, EM waves that should be light speed, although again, there's no strong reason to believe that Mahito himself can get to that level. And unfortunately for Mahito stat-wise, Shigaraki gets really strong by the end of My Hero Academia, even by the standards of that series. We've seen Death Battle cover many of its feats before, including All Might producing a 24 gigaton storm when weakened, and Deku and Bakugo using One for All to collectively produce over 150 teratons. Now, to be fair, that calculation made by Death Battle was confirmed by them to be the highest possible end for that feat, but Shigaraki is still comparable to the full power of All Might or Deku using One for All. He literally has the All for One quirk, the equal and opposite. Even if he was only as strong as All Might was past his prime, he would still be tens of thousands of times more powerful than Mahito, let alone the more realistic difference. He's also as fast as characters that can dodge or even catch lightspeed lasers, so with a lot of leeway, Mahito would be close to that speed, but he more than likely falls much shorter of it. So a lot of this seems very unambiguous and clear-cut so far, no matter what exact numbers you decide to use, but the character's specific abilities, powers, and attributes are where things get a little more confusing. Now, don't get me wrong, as far as general versatility and the strength of the abilities are concerned, Shigaraki still takes that. He has his Decay quirk, which can near instantly decay anyone or anything with just a touch, and he has his Hyper Regeneration, which is basically exactly what it sounds like, but he's also gained or stolen a ton of other quirks thanks to All for One. So now he can fly, discharge electricity, transform his body for attack and defense, copy opponents' attacks and learn about their strengths and weaknesses, increase kinetic energy, use enhanced sensory abilities, and much more. Mahito is definitely the more skilled combatant overall and might be more level-headed, maybe, but either way, those aren't going to keep up with the sheer quantity of long-range and short-range options that Shigaraki has and how powerful they are. However, there are some things on Mahito's side that kind of call into question what the inevitability of this fight could even be, or if Shigaraki has the proper tools to end it, despite being so much more powerful and unpredictable. So kind of like Gojo versus Makima, except in this instance it's the JJK character that's throwing a wrench in what would otherwise be a pretty straightforward debate. For one thing, Mahito also has some very impressive regeneration, to the point of being able to regrow limbs or reform his whole body after it's blown apart. He can even survive damage to his soul to a degree, and while there is the notion in JJK that the body and soul are likely more or less the same thing, in which case you think the soul would be easier to target, Mahito is also a cursed spirit, or a curse, composed of cursed energy. This means that he can't really be dealt normal physical damage aside from the use of cursed energy, and he's pretty well invisible and inaudible to those without that energy too, although not intangible. Cursed energy techniques in some instances can severely weaken those that don't have it, and his idol transfiguration technique lets him reshape or kill the body and soul of whoever he touches. He can also reshape his own body in many creative ways, create clones or an army of reshaped minions if he gets his hands on enough of them, and perform his domain expansion, Self Embodiment of Perfection, which, while being a one-time use, essentially lets him transfigure the souls of anyone caught in it without even needing physical contact. If you get caught in this thing, you cannot avoid it. So I'm sure at this point you can see the issue here. Shigaraki may be the stronger and faster character with more powers, but Mahito actually has a more obvious method of victory, both with his soul manipulation acting as a one-hit kill, and his physical survivability preventing him from dying easily if at all. Shigaraki's regeneration obviously doesn't extend to his soul, and is probably inferior to Mahito's, although still being very potent, and cursed energy is anything but a physical mutation. So despite his ways of stealing or nullifying quirks, that's most definitely not going to work for Shigaraki. He could tank or avoid Mahito's regular attacks or just blow through his army without any issue, but that's not really enough to win. Frankly, in order for Shigaraki to win, he needs to be able to perceive Mahito in some way, not just get all of his attacks noped away because he doesn't have cursed energy, and ideally be able to protect himself from Mahito's insta-win moves to some degree. He does have his power copying, although he needs to get hit with and survive it before he copies it, and I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't extend beyond quirks anyway. I want something more concrete. The easiest hurdle to explain, I think, is how Shigaraki can perceive Mahito. Using his enhanced sensory awareness, he can pick up on physical vibrations made by his surroundings, and potentially even see him by manipulating his own light spectrum perception, as curses actually exist within visible light wavelengths. It should also be noted that some normal people can somehow see curses, despite not being able to see cursed energy, and anyone that's in a life or death situation can definitely see them. Shigaraki can also see and hear vestiges, which are basically the non-physical essence or consciousness of those who have or have had quirks, so that might act as further proof, but either way, I think Shigaraki has more than enough to be able to keep track of Mahito during the fight. But now let's talk about potential win cons. There is the question of whether or not Shigaraki's Decay quirk could put down Mahito, and at first you might want to say no because of his regeneration, but Decay basically turns your whole body to ash if Shigaraki touches you or touches something that touches you, like the ground or a projectile, which is much faster and more extreme than anything we've seen Mahito heal from. So then you might want to say yes because tagging Mahito should be pretty easy for Shigaraki, but that only applies to his regeneration, not the fact that you need cursed energy to deal damage to a curse. However, dealing damage and putting everything under that umbrella might not paint the most accurate picture. Curses still exist within the physical world, and their bodies still react to physical stimuli normally. For instance, if you manage to shoot one of them with a bullet, the bullet won't stop right in front of their body and fall to the ground. They'll still get shot. They won't get hurt, but their body will still be punctured and they'll react to the physical material acting upon them. With this in mind, if Mahito gets hit with Decay, his body will react to it, because at that point it's not even a matter of getting hurt versus not getting hurt, but it's a matter of the whole body being reduced to ash physically all at once. We've seen enough curses react to normal physical stimuli to know that the whole decaying process will not just be halted just from him being a curse. And then you have a lot of other questions which, while being complicated and kind of interpretational, don't really help Mahito's case at all. Going back to vestiges for a minute, Shigaraki possesses many of them within him thanks to All For One, and while I personally don't believe that they count as literal souls, they do act as a line of spiritual defense if another spiritual force tries to invade. Would this be able to counter idol transfiguration or the domain expansion to some degree? Kudo says that vestiges can attack souls, and one even literally took over Shigaraki's soul and body. Would they be able to counterattack Mahito's soul directly during these soul attacking moves? If the answer is yes, then Mahito would certainly die from this after enough damage, as his soul cannot regenerate like he can regenerate his body. Would Mahito's domain expansion even work, since it doesn't work on those that don't have cursed energy? And if you think that's BS, well, then Shigaraki shouldn't be refrained from dealing damage to Mahito just because he doesn't have cursed energy using consistent verse equalization. And even on top of all of that, what happens if Mahito runs out of cursed energy? Which seems like a real possibility, especially if Shigaraki can survive, outrun, or not be affected by the domain expansion because of how much energy it uses. Like, yeah, Mahito might not die exactly, but the fight's over at that point, right? I'll admit some of these questions might be a bit of a stretch, but even if Death Battle sides with Mahito for all of them, Shigaraki's one-hit kill is still much more practical and easier to pull off than Mahito's, just because of his sheer speed and power advantages. And remember that one of Shigaraki's quirks literally allows him to see the strengths and weaknesses of his opponent, meaning that he'd know the best way to fight him and potentially what to avoid. So after all of this, at this point, I'm sure you get my general stance on this debate. I just don't think that Mahito's defense and hand-to-hand fighting skill are enough to save him when Shigaraki just has so much more. He's faster, way stronger, more versatile, and whether you're looking at the Decay quirk, the semantics of cursed energy, or some kind of vestige meddling, I just think that Shigaraki more likely than not has what it takes to win the fight faster than Mahito can. There are like 100 different interpretational things that come up with this debate, so I could see Death Battle seeing it differently, but right now I am siding with Shigaraki. But of course, I also want to hear what all of you guys have to say. Who do you think is going to win? Why do you think they're going to win? Let me know down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. I would really appreciate it. Like I said at the beginning, I am excited for this episode just for the sheer presentation aspect of it. I think it could be really cool, and I hope you're excited for it as well. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.